Welcome to Testing in the Pub.
So welcome to another Testing in the Pub. I am joined with Alan, you're going to co-host in Steve's absence. So Alan Parkinson. We have a special guest, Maaret. I'm going to struggle with your surname again. I'm going to say Pyhäjärvi.
Pyhäjärvi.
Pyhäjärvi. I got it wrong, but hopefully the second I think is good. Thanks for joining us on Testing in the Pub. It's an honour to have you on. The way that we normally start this is just if you give us a little bit of an intro about yourself, a bit about you and your background.
I've been doing testing for the last 20 years. I actually started off kind of like by accident because I studied computer science and I had studied the Greek language. They ended up recruiting me to test the Greek version of Microsoft Office back then. And it was done in Finland. I have no clue why, but that's how I ended up in testing. I had no idea where I ended up. I did this like a test where you're supposed to be observant enough to notice all kinds of problems. And they said, hey, we're going to give you a job. So I took the offer. And from there on, I learned that when I'm more active myself in designing what kind of tests I want to do and actually the exploratory style of testing, then it's much more fun, and that kind of took me all in. So exploratory testing is pretty much what I do. I currently work. Well, I've changed companies every 2 to 3 years typically. And I currently work in a company called Granlund. It's a civil engineering company. We have 600 people and about 20 people work in software development, and I'm the only tester in my software development organization. So,
how do you find that? We've been the only tester with, you said, about 20 developers?
20 developers. Well, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I get along with the guys quite well. I'm also the only woman, by the way. So I feel a bit different. So one of the things that I talk quite often to people about is that I'm very dependent on going to conferences. Like, well, right now we're at the conference.
Yeah.
Because then I get to meet people who are my peers. At work, I'm the odd one out who laughs at finding bugs and, oh, you couldn't have done this in purpose. Like, this is amazing. Like, look at it, I love it. And the guys are like, yeah, let's talk about like technologies and this cool technology here. And like, yeah, I understand that you like it, but it's not the thing that kind of lights me up. So.
But you built up a relationship with your team as well, right? Yeah. So that's fantastic. So the main topic today for this podcast is going to be about mobbing and pairing, and this is really where your experience comes into play, because you mob everything, right, with your current team, with your developers.
Well, actually, I don't mob everything, but it's something we've started doing a lot more.
Right.
So I kind of started off probably a year ago myself on this mobbing and pairing thing. So I was one of the people who believed more in the individual work, and I was kind of sure I had experiences in pairing. I was sure that it's a personality thing, like you need to find the right person to pair with, or it's not a fun thing to do at all. And there was a lot of like techniques type of things that I didn't know of back then that I've been learning since, and I've been practicing with different kind of people since. And on the mobbing side, it's been more about kind of like bringing my team, who are even more individual workers than I am, together so that we can learn from each other. So it's been kind of like a learning journey for the last year.
Yeah. So mobbing is quite new. How did you discover it?
Well, Woody Zuil, who's kind of the father of mob programming in a way, like the one who started talking about it outside his organization, he came to a conference that I organized in Finland about a year ago. So I was asking him to do a talk on mob programming. And it's kind of funny in the sense that I was listening to the talk and yeah, it's kind of inspirational, but wouldn't work in my company. I wouldn't believe that we would do that. So that's kind of how I got started. But he also said this little thing when he was in Finland. He said like, well, if you're ever in San Diego, come and mob with us. And it just so happened that I was in San Diego a couple of months later, so I went and mobbed with them, and that's where I really actually got the kind of like the spark on trying this out more.
Wow. So for the listeners that aren't aware of what mobbing is, or they might have heard the terminology but don't actually know what it is, what does mobbing mean to you? What is mobbing? How do you get mobbed?
Mobbing means that the whole team works on one computer. So you have just one keyboard, one input device, You can have several screens. It's usually better if you have several screens, but you have just one input device, when all the code, all the stuff that goes into the computer goes through that one keyboard. You have a pair of people, or like a pair of roles basically. You have a driver who's on the computer, and the driver is not allowed to think. So the driver listens to the navigators who are the rest of the crowd, who are telling what to do. So it's kind of like a resting place to be the driver, where the navigators are actually like, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, they're telling you like keystroke by keystroke, or if you know concepts, they're telling you like high-level concepts, what they're expecting you to do next. So
That's interesting because I've done mobbing before as well. I love mobbing myself, but the person that's on the keyboard, we've kind of had as a reviewer for the navigators as well, so that they haven't, although they haven't actually been what you class as thinkers, they're still doing a lot of thinking when it comes to the review of the code that they're writing while they're writing it. You know?
Yeah, but this whole thing, it's kind of like the way I see mob programming is that it's based on this strong style pairing, which is the specific style of pairing that I mentioned. So the strong style pairing is the idea that for an idea to go from my head, it must go through someone else's hands. So you actually have to verbalize and vocalize every idea that you want to happen on the computer, and it gives a whole different like level of control to the pair or the driver navigators in the mob. So it's a kind of a cool way of doing things.
Yeah, it is. I sat in your workshop at Test Bash New York with Llewellyn, and I thought that was a really good workshop to be in and to experience. I felt as if the crowd was a little bit too big, because how many people was there?
It was 22 people.
Yeah. So there was a lot of navigators trying to pitch in, and it's kind of, I found it difficult. I found it initially, well, we were still forming a bond. Found it difficult because I was like 10 turns away from being able to be the navigator that's standing up, and I had lots to say, that I felt that they were going in a different path that I would, so I thought that was really interesting. But how did you guys get to work together and sort of form this sort of workshop? And because the structure was brilliant for the workshop, and the tool that you used as well.
Woody Zuil, who is the father of mob programming, and Llewellyn, they're kind of close friends.
Right.
They both live in San Diego, and the whole strong style pairing that they started using first in the dojos that they were doing at Hunter, and then later on that kind of became the core of mob programming. It's a style of pairing that Llewellyn has kind of come up with. So there's like a strong connection between Llewellyn and mob programming. And Llewellyn was also in the same conference. He came with Woody to Finland for the conference. And basically that's kind of when we started talking about pairing more, like let's try out things maybe in a paired way. It kind of actually started from the idea that I wanted to learn to do videos, and he refused to teach me in any other way than pairing up with the lessons that he would give. And whatever I wanted to learn that he knew better, like TDD or unit testing, Llewellyn's reply was always like, let's pair, I will show you, like I'll navigate and you learn that way. Like just give me a book, give me an article, give me a hint, and like I want to learn by myself, but he refused. So yeah. I eventually started like accepting, like okay, fine, I want to learn this, so let me experience it.
Was that because he wanted you to learn from your mistakes?
It's because he's been pairing basically for the last 10 plus years, and he doesn't do pretty much anything without a pair. So it's so strongly taught, or he has learned it so deeply that he feels that that's the best way for teaching stuff to people.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It's a really good way for teaching, but also a really good way for learning, because if you've got a question, you can just ask it, right? And it's different to if you're reading a book where you might look for another resource for clarification. There's much shorter feedback if you're pairing, right? You're sitting with the person you're about to ask, so it's kind of really useful. But do you guys live in the same city, or how does it work if you're
we do a lot of remote pairing as well,
right,
and that's actually something that I've been also practicing with other people then, because again I had this theory that pairing only works with certain types of personalities. that maybe it's just because we get along, that's maybe why we can pair. So I've been pairing with random testers around the world remotely, and that's also like what we can do with Llewellyn when he's not around.
So remote pairings, I haven't heard too many people talk about it. There's always this perception you've got to be sat next to somebody. Have you got any sort of tips or advice on remote pairing?
I find that the strong style thing, the point that one is speaking and the other one is controlling the keyboard, that worked really well for the remote pairing. So I had a really positive feeling about that type of thing. But it's also maybe a bit similar to the like being in the same room, in the sense that when you're sitting next to somebody, if you easily kind of doze off when you're trying to review and you can't quite follow because, well, not everyone is very good at speaking out loud what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But the strong style pairing changes the dynamics so that it kind of like makes it more vocal.
Yeah.
And the small tips that you usually miss on the remoteness, you get those through much better when you're doing strong style pairing. So I find that it actually worked quite nicely. India was a bit difficult because, well, they have connectivity problems.
So we spoke a little bit there about learning as part of pairing, right? But what about learning as part of mobbing? Is it the same sort of learning dynamics, right?
It's actually quite different. Well, let's take an example from my team. If I was an individual contributor and I didn't do that much pairing, when I would invite my team members to pair with me, I usually got a very strong no. And when I started kind of asking them to mob with me, the no was like, well, maybe we could do that for a couple of hours. And it also started opening up doors for them pairing amongst themselves instead of, well, they still don't want to pair with me so much. I still need to kind of stealth pair with my team. I go and ask for help and then they pair with me. But if I call it pairing and I try to set that kind of thing up, they won't still want to do that kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
So we started kind of with mobbing so that we had a facilitator. Llewellyn was in Helsinki at that point. And I invited him back to our company to do a bit of session with us. And he didn't call it mobbing. Like, he just said, let's learn together. So he had us set up in a mob format. And he was giving us basically a couple of refactorings that we were allowed to do, like rename and extract method. We couldn't do anything else. And then he kind of just watched us go through the cycles of 4 minutes, everyone on the computer, changing roles and everybody taking turns. So that's kind of how my team got started with that. And we did a few other sessions as well, like we've been trying Selenium. We've been creating unit tests with Excel, like using approval tests, which is one of the unit testing frameworks. And we've been learning new technologies. And it's kind of cool to see that in the mob format, there's a lot of this kind of like silent information about how do you use the IDE very effectively. Or a lot of like silent information, like somebody knew how to use Selenium and then the rest of us would learn it by osmosis, because basically those who knew would navigate and you would get the actual experience of writing that stuff instead of like a theory lesson. So it was kind of cool.
That's really interesting. Do you ever find that have you ever worked with anyone that's quite quiet, like an introvert that doesn't really like being in a mob? Or
well, I have those people in my team as well.
How do you handle that situation?
Actually, since we're not really socializing, we're just focusing on the work.
Right.
It didn't seem to be a problem for them.
Okay.
I had one fellow in my team who had a bit of problems with the whole idea that this is kind of like being in a kindergarten. Like, again, back to kindergarten, like it's not fun to do these kind of things. And one of the lessons we learned that when you're mobbing, it's good to have people opt out if they don't want to be there, because then the rest of the group, we had like one of the best days of our working time together. We learned so much, we had so much fun, we were laughing like crazy, and when he opted out, he kind of like said like, well, maybe I want to be there next time because you seem to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But while he was there and he didn't want to be there because we kind of like once forced him into joining the group, he was being he was spoiling everybody else's fun as well. Because it was
difficult.
That's a great tip, opting out.
It is, and it's social proofing, so that people want to be involved again, because they see how much fun the group is having, the majority, and they want in on that as well. So
they're missing out. They're observing. They're missing out on the satisfaction of everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also, you can see a lot of these like group dynamics things in the mobs, like people are kind of on their best behavior when other people are around. And especially like when I think of like exploratory testing, so I also do mob testing, especially in training sessions. Sometimes it's kind of fun to see that, well, if you think of exploratory testing as testing performance, you perform better in front of an audience. So sometimes you actually see this, that people are like showing their best side and their best ideas, and like you mentioned earlier, that you wanted, that you had good stuff to contribute and you would want it to be able to contribute more often.
Yeah.
I feel that happens a lot in this like group setting, so it's nice.
So, is that in complete contrast to pairing, where perhaps if you're pairing with somebody, they wouldn't be on their best behaviour, but in a wider group they are?
There's a bit different dynamic. It's not, I don't think it's completely different, but I think the dynamic is a bit different in a pair versus in a group. So in a pair, you always have two people who might be very different. And in a mob, the social structure kind of keeps everyone on a better behavior, whereas in pair, you treat the other one as you want to treat that particular person. So it's kind of like, it changes a bit on how it works.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I know that you mentioned earlier that you're the only female on your team. How do you find that situation as part of a mob? Do you find that you just have the relationship with the team that there isn't an effect, or?
Well, I'm a tester with my main job, and recently with the whole mobbing experience, I've started to realize that part of the reason why I avoid coding is because I feel so uncomfortable about gender issues when I have to face them. I've been very safe with that kind of things my whole career. Like nobody has ever told me that I'm worse because I'm a woman, except now recently. One of my teammates decided to tell that women only write comments in code. And it kind of made me more aware of not wanting to pair with people because I feel like I'm always being judged. And I was really surprised to notice how different the feeling that I have in a mob is, because everybody is 4 minutes on the computer. It's not my code, it's not their code, it's our code.
Right.
So I feel completely safe in the mob, regardless of knowing that there is this a bit of like an undercurrency of negative emotions related to gender issues in my
So,
team.
in a sense, it kind of dissipates because everybody's taking their turn and doing the same activities, right? But in the sense of you being a tester, and you just said that you didn't really learn how to write code, how would you handle your 4 minutes on the keyboard then?
The people who are navigating, they can tell you kind of like high-level concepts, like
Right,
implement this kind of thing. And then when I look puzzled, they would dig in deeper.
Yep.
If I didn't know where to click on the user interface, like where in the IDE I'm supposed to be, they might be saying like, hey, it's in the gutter, or it's line 26, or like they give me a location. They kind of like navigate in more detail. And if they tell me kind of like to introduce a variable, if I look puzzled, which probably I did in the beginning, they would tell me exactly like write VAR and write this and this and this. And again, when you've gone through like one cycle of them telling you like how to introduce a variable, all of that stuff it kind of catches. So it's like it's not complicated, but
I imagine it's the same vice versa when they're on the keyboard and you're navigating them with their testing, right?
Yeah, it is the same the other way around. So it's actually, I find that it's I try to explain to them what I do for my work, but when I get them to mob test with me, that's the only like practical way of conveying the stuff that I do, all the thinking that happens while I do testing.
I like it. It's a great idea. So, did you get any questions to add to this section about mobbing and learning? And
I was wondering if mobbing, doing the testing and the programming, has changed your team's perception of testing and your particular role within the team.
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think it's been fundamental so far. But I still feel that from our trials of mobbing and getting started with that, we are trying to mob now every 2 weeks, 2 hours, so it's still like very little that we're doing. I feel that it has a lot of potential on that side. So there's a lot more to do. But there's kind of like this, we were sitting one day, we had Woody Zuil visit us in our office, and he was working with us on our mob. mob, and that particular day, kind of like I was trying very hard to introduce all kinds of like variations to how programmers would do things. Like I would suggest, like when they're starting the browser to test the thing that they were just implementing, like, hey, let's change the browser every time we open that, and I was trying to suggest that, hey, can we change the data into something more complicated or something more representative? And some of those tips they take. So it's already kind of like giving me tools to inflict some of the things that I have to do later on. And when we do retrospectives, usually after a session of mobbing, then I can point out that, hey, I noticed that I was doing this and you were taking my advice on this. So I'm hoping it will catch on more.
That's really interesting. And I know that Llewellyn, I mean, you guys did the talk at Test Bash New York as well, and as well as the workshop. And I noticed that he was telling a story about when you first started pairing, he didn't really know about testing, right? That you've actually taught him so much about testing already. So I guess that's a different, with mobbing, it's kind of like the mob is learning, but maybe at a slower pace than pairing when it comes to that last question about educating developers about testing as well, right? So,
yeah, you get more like one-on-one time if you pair with somebody, and again, maybe you might be learning a bit different things. So in a mob, you can kind of like handle the whole group at once, and the group kind of creates common patterns of how they work. Whereas in a pair, maybe you can transfer your knowledge more effectively.
Did you ever find any frustration in that though? Right, especially at the beginning when say for example Llewellyn didn't know about testing, and you're trying to instruct him to test in a pairing session and he's maybe not understanding.
It was actually kind of funny when we were trying to pair the first time for exploratory testing. I had my work application that I basically took out, and I had a new feature that I needed to test. I had not tested it before, so it was like a real case from my company, but he's not working in my company, he's a consultant that travels around. And I asked, we agreed to pair together, and I would be navigating and he would be driving. And we opened the application, and I got this like first dialogue of the feature open, and I was asking out loud, like, well, I wonder what size this dialogue is. And he's like, he starts showing me all these tools, like he had this ruler that can like measure by pixels how big it is. Like, you asked how big it is. And I wasn't really interested in how big it was. I kind of wanted to know if it fits on my screen, and there was a lot of other things that I wanted to do. So he kind of hijacked the whole session. And we call our first experience in Exporters, we call that like look at me pairing. So it's kind of like turned into him showing me all the cool stuff that he could do. And we needed to try again later on exploratory testing, and him really like actively saying that he's just gonna drive for me and I get to navigate, and he's not going like trying to change the direction. And then we only had like a better experience in pairing.
Yeah, I've certainly experienced that in pairing before, where you're trying to navigate. So what I would do in a paired testing session, if it was like two testers, for example, usually there's one person driving the application and one person driving the exploratory testing notes. Right? That's the way I kind of like to work. And the person driving the exploratory testing notes might well be guiding the testing as well, right? And I've certainly experienced times where I'm trying to guide someone and they're like, oh yeah, but why don't I just try this as well while I'm here? You know what I mean? It's like, no, we're coming to you. But yeah, I guess that putting it into words like that really actually just highlights that there is actual models that you can use to overcome these problems. They're very useful.
And I also find that when you change the roles regularly, like you use a timer, you change every 4 minutes, that's usually how you start with mobbing, and then later on maybe use 15 minutes when you change, like you take the time to be a bit longer. Yeah, I find that when you change the roles, it also gives you kind of like the time when you know that you get to be the one who decides. So when you know that there's a timer, it's easier to stick to the roles and kind of know that your moment of contribution will come as well.
Yeah. Cool. Have you ever paired with someone that you haven't had a connection with?
With the remote sessions, I definitely didn't feel completely connected with all of those people.
Right.
And also in some of my, especially testing mobbing sessions, the training sessions, I've had groups where I find it very difficult to work, and I've needed to kind of learn to facilitate better and know when to kind of like go in and help them to do the things more properly.
Is that facilitator role really important in mobbing?
In long-term mobbing, no, but when you get started, there's a lot of usually kind of like things where you don't quite know how you're supposed to do it. You forget the roles. You start, for example, shouting on top of others. You want to contribute your knowledge so badly that the more quiet ones don't get to say anything. So then you might actually want to have like more while you're learning types of roles in that. So it helps there, and especially when I teach. I usually teach exploratory testing in a mock format. So when I need to teach how to do certain things that the group doesn't know how to do, it's very important that I can step in from a facilitator role to being one of the navigators or kind of the designated navigator, and I can kind of like drive the whole group through this. And we had an experience like this when Llewellyn was showing how to do unit testing.
Yep.
Like he was driving a group of testers where most people had never written code. He was driving them into refactoring code so that you could pull out like a scene so that you can test just a particular feature.
Yeah.
So that's something you usually have to do as a facilitator in the training sessions, because people might not have the skills to do it yet anymore.
I really enjoyed that part in the workshop as well, actually. And it was just like, when his code commented it, it was just like, just delete it. I'm like, should I just delete this?
It's commented out.
I know, exactly. But yeah, and just the refactoring, I don't actually think there was any developers in the workshop, right?
No.
And but yeah, everybody was taking turns at the keyboard, and Llewellyn was doing a great job instructing us, and particularly with the code. But when it came to the testing, we were instructing ourselves as well, you know. And when it came to like doing a lot of retesting once we'd refactored code, then it was just a really good experience. It was a really good thing to get into. You know? So, for listeners that want to learn more about mobbing and pairing, do you have anything you can recommend, like reading material or blogs or videos online? Or?
There's very nice articles on pairing. There's a very nice one, for example, from Katrina Clokey, where she summarizes all the pair testing types of articles. That's a very nice read. But on other things to read, well, there's always my blog. So I have a blog called visiblequality.blogspot.com. So you can always go there. And me and Llewellyn, we've been working recently on writing a book about getting started with mob programming. So it's called Mob Programming Guidebook, and it's available on Leanpub. So you can go download it for free if you like. So and again, we find that one of the nice things about Leanpub has been that when people actually have been paying some dollars, small money for that book, it's made us actually write more chapters and clarify things. So it's like a great energy. Like it gives us a lot of energy in writing. So
yeah,
that's
and
fun.
I'm sure many people will get value from it as well.
Yeah.
So that's the way I normally look at Leanpub books is, and if I know I'll get value from it, so I'll contribute towards it. You know, so that's a really good thing to do. So we're at Agile Testing Days. How have you experienced here, Brent? Because I know that there's been the games night and a lot of people, it looked as if actually in the games night there was a lot of people mobbing over the games as well, a lot of people over whiteboards and stuff, like trying to solve puzzles together. But there's been a lot of workshops as well actually. Have you experienced anything here around about similar styles to how you would approach your work?
No, actually I haven't, because again, for the group sessions to be mobbing, I would call for the strong style pairing.
Yeah.
And that usually doesn't happen.
Yeah. There's usually everyone just shouting out ideas, right?
Yeah, it's more like a group work instead of actually this, like the thing that is called mob programming.
Yeah.
It's more of a specific way of working in a group.
You've got the leaders taking charge, other people being pushed down.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's a realization that collaboration, right, is part of mobbing, but collaboration on its own is not mobbing, right? Mobbing is much more way of structuring it so that everyone gets an equal opportunity of being able to give their input.
And again, if the person on the keyboard, the driver, is doing thinking, that's usually where I get the feeling that this is not mobbing. So if the group is watching somebody doing work, that's not what I would call mob programming or mob testing. That's then just a group activity where you just decided to have one keyboard.
Yeah,
That's a great tip.
yeah, I like that. Okay, we normally end on favourite book, but I've actually flicked through your book on Leanpub, and I'm going to start by saying that's my favourite book of the week, because it's something that I can definitely take back to my organisation.
It's definitely one going on the
Yeah. Leanpub. What's it called again? What's the book called again?
Mob programming guidebook.
Right, excellent. Do you have a favourite book on mobbing or?
Well, there's not much books on mobbing yet. I'm still hoping that Woody Zuil would eventually write his book, which is also only in pub, but there's nothing published yet. So that might be my future favorite book then. But well, it's kind of new thing still. So a lot of teams are now kind of like experimenting with it and trying it and calling it kind of the next generation of XP, like one of the basic practices there. But there's nothing written on that yet. But kind of on the book side, I read a lot, and it seems like I don't have like sticking favorites, but right now one of the books that I've really enjoyed reading is called Talk Like TED.
Oh, I love that book.
That's like the whole idea of how do you develop your skills as a speaker, how do you get your message across better, how do you learn to tell stories, kind of that type of thing. That's really what kind of like is close to my heart right now.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about that on actually that book, Talk Like TED, and what makes a good TED talk. And actually, you can relate to some of the keynotes that we've seen as well, where they've been very personal stories that have had a bit of humour in there that people can relate to as well, you know, and with a lesson behind it all, you know, and it can be very powerful. And yeah, great book. Anyway, thanks so much for just sharing your knowledge and experience and being on this podcast. It's been
Thanks for having me.
a pleasure.